And I just have a few slides basically just to sort of give a vendor concept, a vendor perspective. I'm going to turn it over to Jamie, who is a much better presenter and can talk much more from a sort of an operator side. But I just have 3 slides basically to talk about, I guess, a bit of past, present, and future. If we go back sort of a year or so, 2010, what we were talking about at conferences like this was, there was all the graphs of video growing, the different subject, revenue declining, costs of transport increasing. It was all a sort of business case for operator CDN. Show me the business case. How do I make money of it? What does it look like? Optimizing traffic. And really, I think sort of, that was really what dominated these sort of conferences a couple of years ago. But if you sort of look towards the second half of 2010 and into 2011, really the conversation shifted from why should I deploy an operator CDN to how do I do it and how fast do I do it. And we got to the stage where operator CDNs were very, very real. There was lots of them out there. They weren't just a few little tiny caches deploying, carrying a few tens, hundreds of megabits. These were, multi-hundred gigabit, multi-terabit in some cases networks that were deployed. So the question from operators to us as a vendor shifted from, why should I do it to how fast can you sort of help me do it? And if you look a little bit more in the future, sort of, where do we think as a vendor the sort of the discussion's going? It's really, now I have that CDN in place. I'm using it to deliver my video. How do I do more with it? How do I integrate more of my legacy traffic with it? How do I improve and add value-added services to allow me to better monetize the video? How do I add more functionality into the CDN to allow me to optimally carry that video better through the network? So really the sort of, the discussion of change from sort of why to how do I do it better? And I think there's no sort of better example than that than to let sort of Jamie talk through what's happened in Time Warner Cable.
Great, thanks, Paul. Good afternoon, my name is Jamie Miles, and as Paul said, I run content operations for Time Warner Cable. I'm responsible for the group that's operating our national video backbone, where we acquire the signals and move them around in our backbone, and then all the next generation infrastructure that we put in place, which is our HTTP encoders, our origin, our storage, and the CDN, the Velocix CDN that we've deployed into the Time Warner Cable backbone in order to be able to deliver our video content. I recognize that it's 3 minutes, and I'm between you and lunch. So I had a 10-minute talk, so grab your seat. We're going to speed date here together. I'm just going to kind of go through some of the salient points, and we're going to talk a little bit about what Time Warner Cable is doing. So I'm going to step back in time a little bit. I'm experimenting with a presentation style here. You can let me know at the end if you like it or not. But if we step back in time a little bit and think about what cable companies really are, in the beginning, go back 50-ish years or so ago, when they basically went out and started putting infrastructure into people's homes, and then they went and they put the connectivity up so they could pull down local content. And as we evolved a bit, we put up satellite infrastructure so we could pull down national content. And what that ultimately really let us do then is, in each of these little bubbles, we were able to bring in content, condition it with the right encoders so we could get it onto our plant, and then deliver that down to the set-top boxes that we put in people's houses, and people could slip through their video and watch their linear content at that point. If we go forward a little bit in time into kind of the late 90s, and I make the internet comment as a passing comment only because this is a talk about video over CDN, but the internet was an important thing here because it really drove the cable companies and our partners in cable labs to invent DOCSIS. And what DOCSIS allows us to do is to be able to deliver IP fragments over our QAM plant that would go into people's homes. And so they were initially able to consume internet traffic and kind of cheesy video a little bit. You think about like the Ooga Chugga Baby of the late 90s and then ultimately on into the UGC stuff. But this is a pretty pivotal moment for the industry because it gave us the ability to get IP packets across the already existing private IP networks that we had that we were running our video on to move it around inside of our network. Now we created the ability to transit the internet through our IP network and then down into the user's home. If we move forward a little bit more into the early 2000s, the next kind of major thing that happened was people started asking to be able to do video on demand on the classic video side. And so we put these VOD catchers in place so we could pull down the VOD content. And then we put VOD streamers in place so that could go into our QAM plant and we could deliver VOD content down to the users. And if we move forward just a touch more into the future, what ended up happening was the cable company said, you know what, we've got all these disconnected networks. It doesn't make a lot of sense. There's a lot of inefficiency in the way that we're moving around our video. So let's just go ahead and connect them together. Let's build a big IP network, which we've done. Most of the major cable companies now have connected together all of what were their previous regions now into a common backbone. And it allowed us to get rid of some of the inefficiency that we had. You'll note that the satellite dish on the left and the encoders, the IRDs, and the VOD catchers disappeared. And what the cable companies do now is they're able to kind of centralize in some of the way that they were acquiring, conditioning, and cleaning up the video. But the other really interesting thing that happened around that same time is that people started to want to watch their video on devices other than just their television. And I'm not talking about Ooga Chuck and Dancing Baby. I'm talking about really long-form video. And we saw in the mid-2000s and forward that people were starting to consume long-tail content and long-form content. Some of the early days with Move Networks and some of the ABC and folks like that ended up putting their content on really started to pave the way for people wanting to watch the long-form video. And the cable companies have been aware of that. But I think we've been watching it for a little while just to kind of see whether or not that was going to be a fad or was really going to take off. And if you look back a couple, 3 years, it became very clear that consumers wanted to watch what they want, when they want, and on the device they want to watch. And so what that's driving cable companies to do, and I can speak for Time Warner Cable, what we've decided to do is in order to make sure that we can fulfill our charter, which is to deliver video services to our customers, we've started to put infrastructure in place that allows us to do what we already did so well on the classic side and be able to deliver it to this multitude of devices that customers have. And what that means is we had to deploy things like HTTP encoders, and so we've got our adaptive encoders in place, and we're doing HLS and smooth streaming today. We had to put our origin servers in place, our storage servers in place. But then in order to really be able to deliver the content, anytime you want to get to any level of scale, we had the same problem that the internet video folks of the last few years had as well, and that's how do you actually get the distributed infrastructure in place to do it? It's a classic problem to solve with the CDN. So we put out an RFP and went and looked for a partner that we could work with, and for a number of reasons, for a number of great reasons, we chose Velocix, but their technology, and then also they helped us stand it up, and they've been operating it for us in the interim while I was basically building a team from scratch. We're about to take over that operation, so we'll be wholly operating the CDN in the next couple of months that we built collectively with Velocix. And what that's allowed us to do now was last year, in March of last year, we launched video services onto the iPad, and we took 25 of our existing linear channels, and we forked it off of the classic feeds that we were taking from our backbone and put it into the adaptive encoders and started doing those feeds to the iPad. And since then, we've grown that up. We're about 300 linear channels today. We'll be, over the next year to year and a half, we'll be 2,000 to 2,500 linear channels that we'll put onto these platforms. We're shortly going to be launching VOD into the environment. And we're doing the same thing. We're taking those same VOD packages that we were sending out classic, and we're running them through transcoders and creating the assets. And what it's ultimately going to allow us to do is to be able to take the video that's our job to deliver, and deliver it to our consumers. On the iPad today, we launched a portal towards the end of last year with smooth streaming and Silverlight so that you can watch on your PC and Mac. We have a number of the other devices that are on here in progress. We've partnered with a number of the TV manufacturers for the devices that they're building. We're looking at next-generation IP set-top boxes. Interestingly, those will be boxes. Some of them are boxes that can take both classic QAM video plus IP video, so we can kind of figure out how to optimize the infrastructure we have in place. And we're also looking at boxes that are just pure IP boxes, like your Roku or something like that, for example. And then we're starting to partner with a lot of the gaming console folks as well. And again, really the goal here is for us to be able to take the video that we were able to deliver in the past and now convert it so that we can deliver it across the private IP network that we had and across that DOCSIS infrastructure that we put in place and deliver video directly to our users. I just condensed my 10-minute talk into about 6 minutes. So I think that's Feel free to get up if you want to take off to lunch, but if there are any questions, go ahead, sir. Well, I mean, that is what we do as a business, right? So we go out and we do deals with all of the content owners already today. When you're watching television for the thousands of channels we have on our TV, we're just extending that to the additional devices that people have in their home. So, I mean, I think that is our business. That is what we do. We go out and we do content deals to get content to put onto our plan. So.
Just for the panel, when do you think that the real production, the sort of CDN Federation networks will be deployed? Or a year away, 2 years away? Where are we?
So the question was, when do we think that CDN Federation is going to take off? Okay. You want to take that?
So I'll start answering that one. So, I expect there will be a gradual deployment and a gradual move towards a full standardized open solution. I guess what I'm arguing in the presentation is that it's almost possible to build a functional enough CDN federation today without standards, right? With a number of restrictions, such as you cannot mix and match platforms, and you cannot achieve probably all the advanced functions you'd like. But it's possible to deploy a service today. And for some of the use cases, such as software delivery, that would be perfectly fine. So I think it could start pretty shortly. And we're discussing with service providers who have short-term use cases, such as in-country federation. Then I think it will be a process to evolve towards more open solutions. From a standards perspective, I think you could expect to have real protocol specs stable in the first half of next year, right? I think there will be products that will start implementing that in the first half of next year, and say middle of the year you'll have your very stable specs. So that would be the time when you would be able to now go full open standards multi-vendor approaches. Did you want to add something perhaps, or no?
I think that's a great answer.
Okay, so another question?
So regarding CDN Federation, do you endorse the CDN Federation model for the next year, both Telefonica, Time Warner, and Velocix operator, UK operator?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think we've got to look at it from a different, but I think the sort of the implementation timeline, to go a little bit back to the last question, is not a technical issue, it's a business issue, and it's a business issue between the different service providers, and then you have the complexity with the content rights sort of on top if you're talking premium video. And also a lot of the discussions around CDRM Federation today are sort of service provider to service provider. And I think there's a big bit missing there. And sort of Telefonica described the sort of the nightmare of having everybody's cache in your network. Well, one of the ways to fix that is to sort of do, broaden the CDN Federation party and invite some of the over-the-top CDN players, into the party. And so I think there are more business challenges than technical challenges, but absolutely. I mean,
I didn't see the logos from Velocix or Telefonica or Time Warner on the pilot. So
it's because he did the slides.
Well, the pilot is one initiative, right? So, there's other initiative. The standards is another initiative, and Velocix is active in the standards as well.
So the question was, for those of you who didn't hear, do we endorse the CDN Federation? They asked Velocix, Time Warner, and Telefonica. So from a Telefonica standpoint, it's not so much as we endorse it. We're happy seeing it happen. Right now, we really think we need to do our thing. Because we operate internationally, it's not like we need to federate to reach other territories. I think it's important for us to deploy and operate our existing infrastructure today and sort of manage what we can do today and make it attractive for others to federate with, which we think we'll be doing in a stronger position in a couple of months' time than we would have done a couple of months ago.
I mean, I think the concept of federating is interesting, and I do think that over the long term it's important. The timing of it, I think, is going to be really the question of when does it become important. I agree that we're going to have this massive growth in video, but I think a lot of that growth in video may actually happen in the provider's network. So I take my company, for example, right? We're going to go and build this infrastructure so we can deliver the video that we've already gone out and done all the contracts to get that video content, to the question you asked a minute ago, right? That's a lot of the growth that we're looking at. I mean, if we look at our forecast, that's going to be a ton of IP growth. But it didn't require us to go and federate with any other CDNs, right? That required us to go out and do our contract negotiations to get the content, the same thing we do today. Now, I realize it's a bit different in Europe, where the DSL provider tends to not also be the deliverer of the video, and so it's slightly different. But here in North America, for the cable companies, the thing that I'm more worried about is how do we scale our plant to handle all the video that we're already bringing into our plant. And I think the federating stuff is interesting, and I certainly think that there's a lot of use cases that will happen. But if the majority of the growth, at least in our network, is from the video that we're going to put onto it, then it might not necessarily be the thing we have to focus the most on today, I think would be my comment.
Someone in the back.
I'm wondering, as an integrated provider, delivering more and more of your own content to the end customer, including ultimately pretty much every movie or TV show people want to watch. What's the obviously the transparent caching CDN for most of the top traffic will improve the quality of that video and reduce the cost. But why would you do it if your advantage is QoE and you can cache your own content deeper in the network and provide a better QoE with your own content? Is there any regulatory requirement? What's the trade-off there?
So it's a question for me. I'm not sure I totally got it then. So are you asking whether we are thinking about doing transparent caching, or I'm not sure I understood the question.
The question really is a video that
Sure.
versus paying Netflix, to name a logical one, or anyone else for content delivered over the top. Why competitively, why would you want to cache their content closer to the customer and deliver their content with a better quality of experience?
Well,
And there's a regulatory aspect to that too.
Sure. So to be clear, we're not doing that, right? We're building a CDN to deliver the video that we already have the rights to be able to deliver. So if we go out and we do a deal and say we got Fox or somebody like that that's already on our plant and we're delivering video into the home to these other devices where we already have contractual rights to do that, that's what we're putting the CDN in place for today. So it's not transparent caching. We're not doing anything else. The other content still comes in through the internet connections. It comes fairly across our pipes. It's different than the video we're delivering. They both use IP protocol, but it's different, right? I mean, and so our CDN is for doing the video delivery that we're doing. It's today. I mean, who knows? That may evolve over time, but that's where we're at today.
And I'd like to jump into that. We are doing that. So not transparent caching, obviously, but we are delivering our own content. We have channels all over Latin America and IPTV initiatives. And we have had that conflict. Our IPTV guys, our OTT guys have said, you know, why are we putting our CDN available for our competitors in the content space? And the answer to that is on the doc slide. So we believe we're good at providing content, but so are other people, and our end users are ultimately it's not going to be their fault that because they're with Telefonica, they only have access to a certain amount of content. We need to make all of the content available for them, and there is an opportunity for us to generate business as well and savings in our network. That's it.
So we're going to stop it with that. Thank you very much for your time
Thank
today,
you.
everyone. Have a nice
Thank
life.
you.